Now, we've got lots of questions going into Wrath of the Lich King Classic, and they range from things to do with dungeons, random dungeon finder, heirlooms, and many more. Today, we're going to talk about 5 top things, and to some of you, they might not seem massive, but they will have a knock-on effect for potentially whatever exists after Wrath of the Lich King, or your enjoyment of Wrath of the Lich King following their implementation. I know that might seem a bit of a mouthful, and you're like, I don't know what any of this means. But bear with me and it will make sense. So when it comes to the top 5, my number 1 would actually be cold weather flying. So will it be in at launch? So cold weather flying was introduced in 3.0.2, which is Wrath of the Lich King. So you can actually fly from 77 onwards on your character. Now up until 3.2, when Trial of the Grand Crusader was launched, you had to get to 77 on a character before you could fly. When 3.2 hit, for 1,000 gold, you could buy it on your main character on a level 80. You could buy a Tomb of Cold Weather Flying, but then you could send it to your alts on the same account at level 68. This meant at level 68 you could fly. So you could fly in Borean Tundra, Howling Ford, Dragonblight, Sholazar, although you by 77 you'd probably be in Sholazar and be able to fly anyway. But it just made things easier on your alts. And I think with fresh servers coming, is it the time to actually reconsider this coming at a later date and put it in at launch? Because if you choose to start on fresh servers, you've got that pain of going all the way from 1 to 80. Rather than some of the pain being alleviated already because you're currently level 70, probably geared as well, and it's not quite as bad. When you're having to do it all in one sitting, getting to 68 and then being able to fly using the Tomb of Cold Weather Flying at 68 just makes it slightly less painful. Now, should that be in at launch? I think it should. I think at launch it should be available. We know they're not going to differentiate between fresh realms and existing realms, although they should. And there's lots of things we're going to talk about on the channel over the next couple of months as to why they should be treated as their own entity. And that's Fresh Realms I'm talking about, where they should be slightly different. Not massively different, where it's going to encourage people to, abandon their existing characters and re-roll to Fresh, or vice versa. Force people who are on Fresh to feel at a disadvantage and go to the old Legacy Realms. I don't know what else to call them. They're Legacy Realms now. Because with Fresh coming, they're old news. They don't matter anymore. They don't matter to me. But ultimately, I think we need to just think differently about some of these things, and it will make sense as we go along. So cold weather flying for me is one that absolutely should be in at launch, and just on the basis that you have to do it on one character anyway. So you have to get your main character to 80 before you get that minor convenience boost of being able to fly from 68 on your alts. In a similar vein, but this time it was in 3.3, where they changed the faction enchants. So these are the top level shoulder and head enchants, such as the shoulder enchants from Sons of Hodir, or the head enchants from places like the Kirintor, Wormrest Accord, Knights of the Ebonblade, or Argent Crusade. As long as you've got the reputation required on your main character, these class then as heirlooms, and you can send them to your alts. So you only need to do the reputations once. Now, the most important one here really is Sons of Hodir, because that's one that requires either gold investment from the auction house or doing dailies every day, which potentially you don't want to invest that sort of time into an alt that you're just, doing alt raids on or helping the guild out or whatever. So these became BOA, bind on account, in 3.3, which is right at the end of Wrath of the Lich King. It's the ICC patch. Now, we don't know what's coming next, and that's where a lot of this conversation is going to stem, is what is coming next. If Wrath of the Lich King ends up as the end of the line, do we really want to wait until the last few months of the game that we've been playing for however long now, since 2019, or maybe you start on one of the Fresh Realms, to actually get some of these minor conveniences that you would want to take advantage of? Ultimately, you want to take advantage of these, and you won't be able to take advantage of them for too long, because ICC is quite a big raid. It's a big raid that's going to require a lot of effort, a lot of commitment to actually clear. So the final phase of the game is not an alt leveling phase. It's a phase where you're progressing, where you're trying to clear the hardest content that has been offered to you so far in the expansion. So having these minor conveniences come in for alt leveling or as catch-up mechanics or whatever you want to describe them as in the final phase is the wrong time for them to be put in, especially with the uncertainty that surrounds the end of Wrath of the Lich King. Is that where Classic finishes, and do we only get seasonal servers from there, or do we go into Cataclysm? If we go into Cataclysm, not so much of a big deal. If we don't go into Cataclysm, It's quite a big deal. And the next one could potentially be a big deal for you if you do PvP. We don't talk about PvP on the channel anywhere near enough as we should. And Isle of Conquest is a fantastic battleground, but taking away how good it is or what you have to do, because it is an epic 40v40 battleground and it's fun. You can do, mounted combat. You can go up on a gunship and parachute down and then start ganking people. Like, it is actually a really, really fun battleground. But do you want to be waiting until the last sort of third of the expansion to actually start working on these achievements? Because if you're achievement hunting, getting 100 Isle of Conquest wins and getting all the other achievements that go together to get the meta achievement will take some time. And it might be time that is running out. You just haven't got enough time to physically finish all of these achievements in the time span that's left of Wrath of the Lich King. And ultimately, even if Cataclysm does come out, you want to get these done in current content, so you want to make sure you've got plenty of time to actually do it. And with the implementation of Isle of Conquest coming in 3.2, which was Trial of the Crusader again, you've only got the amount of time that TOC is out and ICC and Ruby Sanctum to actually get all these achievements done. So should it be out at launch? It's another one where I think it makes sense to be out at launch, again, to give you plenty of time, give you the entire expansion to be able to get all the achievements done in there, really enjoy Isle of Conquest, rather than it coming out at a time when you might be progressing in PvE. Nax, let's face it, tier 7 is not the hardest raid or hardest tier in the world. So it's the time where you're going to get a lot of chance to do PvP, do battlegrounds, do achievement farming, and all of these things. I'm thinking from a let's pad out and let's pack out that first phase of content, so there's lots of things to do. And then a massive one, and this is massive. It's probably things that even you as a private server player coming from Warmain or coming from Sunwell or Synergy or any of these other private servers that you should not be playing on, by the way. Let me be straight about that, because I never would. But if you did, you know that the reputation gains are quick, and you probably think that's normal, because that's what you're used to. So going in and doing your heroic spam and getting exalted with Argent Crusade, Alliance Vanguard, Horde Expedition, Kirin Tor, Knights of the Ebonblade, or Wormrest Accord, any of those where you can equip a tabard or not have a tabard equipped and just get reputation from doing heroics. If you didn't know, in 3.3, they were sped up by roughly 30%. Now, that's an increase in reputation that we do not want, because again, in the effort of prolonging the amount of content and the amount of enjoyment we can get out of Phase 1, we simply do not want those reputations being at that sped up rate. What was also introduced here was with Emblems of Triumph, you could actually buy reputation. Now, that's not a problem, because that was actually at a point where reputation was kind of pointless. The items you got from it or the need for having it was not very important. But at launch, if we're in a 3.3.5 state, technically the reputation could be sped up by 30%. And the same goes for Sons of Hodir quests, giving more reputation overall, so actually getting your shoulder in chances quicker. And what we don't want is super quick content in Phase 1. We want to have to do heroics and work for those reputations. And this might seem like, hang on, you're saying, well, we want this content, but we want fast content, brought forward, but then slower reputations. The whole point of it is with Phase 1 ultimately only having Nax, Sarfarian, EOE, and VOA, the content's not that entertaining. I'm going to say it's not that entertaining. So we want that reason. We need that sort of drive to go and keep doing heroics for as long as possible, really. So 30% across all of those factions. Yeah, we want that in its pre-nerfed state. Don't get me wrong, when we get to sort of the ICC phase, there'd be no problem then nerfing all the reputations by 30%, or even when you get to around the TOC phase or Trial of the Grand Crusader phase, because by then, reputation items are more of a catch-up mechanic than anything else. But at launch, we absolutely want it in its normal state without the 30% reputation gains that some of you may be used to. And this leads me nicely onto the last one. The Kalawak Fishing Derby. It's not really one that people think about a great deal because it is just a fishing tournament. We've got a fishing tournament in Stranglethorn Vale and we've had it for years. But this one is a special one. Whilst you may remember it as being in all the time, it actually wasn't implemented until 3.3. So in 3.3, that's Ice Crown. Again, right at the end of the expansion. Now, this grants Kalawak reputation from completing the quests. You can get the Boots of the Bay, which give you fishing skill increase by 15 and whisks you away to the finest drinking establishment in Booty Bay, also known as a teleport to Booty Bay, which is really nice. Ultimately, what everyone's going to want is the Dread Pirate Ring, which is a 5% experience increase ring. So it's an heirloom ring that you can send to your alts. Now, the thing with this is you're not going to be in the mindset of leveling alts during ICC. You're going to be focusing on raiding. You're going to be focusing on what comes next. The time for leveling alts is phase 1, phase 2, and let's face it, maybe phase 3. So this ring, whilst it may be useful for some people, this could have far more use for everybody if it was in at launch. If you want to find more out about the Kalawak Fishing Derby, I do talk about it in numerous videos, actually, because it's one that not many people really rave about when it's a big deal. 5% XP from kills and quests. Everyone should be trying to get this that has any intention of leveling alts or, leveling any characters on the fresh servers. It's going to be absolutely banging. So these are my top 5 things that should be in at launch that technically might not be in at launch. Which ones do you like? Which ones don't you like? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe and roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.